Oh, well, that's very nice. Okay. So I'm going to try to do this within a much shorter time than I did the live earlier. There was just something that came up in the live that I just wanted to make sure everybody who was there, you got to be there. But there was just something that came up. I messed up on OPSEC in a way. So what I wanted to make sure to touch on, what this is going to be about is a Cede and Company, CDE and Company, CEDE and Company, the Senior Executive Services, and the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. And yes, okay, so that people kind of get an understanding for how much there was because there's something that I'm seeing that as I started to think about it, I'm like, no. Too many people who are kind of like on the new right of sorts have sort of this sense of disappointment, maybe even dread, that they're just seeing how things are going to go. But it's the doomer, the doom and gloom thing, doomer. And what I wanted to do, cables, cords, there's too much of this sort of like, we had our shot, or, because Trump's such a boomer, that sort of like it almost an all is lost, it's all going to fall apart. Well, but the thing is just to keep the ship running. See, what I have to think about a lot of times is somebody has to supply Deanna Troi with proper tailoring on the Starship Enterprise. Same thing with us. Somebody's got to actually get all that ice cream for Nancy Pelosi. At some point, you just can't fuck the system up so bad that you have no idea if you're going to be able to have anyone around you could trust. And yes, there's two ways that's going to work into this. So if things fall apart, who are you going to trust? Who's really going to look after you? So when you're powerful, that's actually one thing. So this gets into the whole thing of how politicians often are kind of megalomaniacal, a lot of sociopathic stuff going on, even to the point of somebody like AOC where it's way out there. You kind of wonder if maybe she's a little psychopathic to somebody, the hyper, was it hyper feminine brain, hyper emotionality, because that autists are considered the hyper masculine brain. We actually have a scale. There was a scale developed, and there is a thing called the hyper feminine brain, and it's the histrionic, the kind of the nut jobs, the maskies, the wokies. They are actually at the other end where they're hyper emotional. They can't restrain their mind from being in endless make believe abstractions. So these sort of deep relationships with something that's not real. And that's why critical race theorists, they are the way they are, because they're fundamentally long departed from actual metrics and real events that they could put it all together and make it somewhat logical timeline for people. So that's why they can't explain why white people love Stax Records all over the world. They can't explain that. They can't really explain why people like Parliament. And how that could have been if the world is full of just such horrible racist people who hate all the black people. How is it that Parliament, Run DMC, James Brown flying on his own plane, how could a private jet? How could any of this happen? And so they can't really explain that because they're not using real metrics. They're in a hyper emotional make-believe world. So, one of the things that started to happen with the new right was really being one, the 4chaners were very good. The whole thing with anons and 4chaners and all that, that was very good. The people started really thinking, they started moving up levels of how is stuff organized. Well, now, because so many of you are now the age that you're investing, you're no longer just playing video games and shitlording, that some of you have brought up some very interesting subjects. A good friend of mine brought up this subject, and I had heard about it from Michael Invests, and I think it's Michael Invests and Tries to Get Rich. This really nice Australian guy. I'm pretty sure it's Australian. Forgive me if he might be a Kiwi. I get those wrong, and there's even slang that I confuse for the other. But I think actually he might be a New Zealander, but I'm not sure. It's every once in a while, because he'll say things as a joke that's casual language, and I'm like, shit, I don't remember if that's Australian or if that's Kiwi. So here we go. He brought up Cede and Company, Cede and Company. So I'm doing this from Wikipedia. So no, I'm not. This isn't Red State. This isn't 4chan. This is just what you'll find on Wikipedia. And for anybody who finds this, who is a liberal, a Democrat, a progressive, this is what this took a long time to find. There's a whole bunch of stuff like this that I basically, at one point, Alex Jones had done an interview with somebody that I was like, this is if this man's a fake, then then he's very good at it. And I looked up, this guy's genuinely, he was on the FBI's team to find Nazis. And he recently had because of record declassification, he was able to publish a lot of stuff about his career and what he found. That changed everything about what I understood about the government, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, what the Democrats have had to know for a generation. The whole reason why George Bush was vice president at all, like how that even happened. Because if you knew a Republican who was a Republican and had been a Republican, they were not happy that George Bush was vice president. At the time, they weren't. And I saw the debates when I was a child. I got to hear what people had to say, what the Republicans had to say about. And so this is where McCain, the beloved McCain made the elder Bush palatable. I just want to throw that out there. McCain would get thrown in the ring, and he would mix it up with the Bush, and George, and then it's another George, I got knocked out, oh no, I'm a patriot, I was tortured, So so now people get like. So I just want to put this out there, because the senior executive services part of this is the part where you're going to start being like, whoa. People in the chat, when they heard some of this stuff that is just open, you could just find this. You could apply to be in the senior executive services. All of you have encountered these people in the media. You just start thinking through people. Just start rolling through it. And then especially, this is very important for Democrats, progressives, leftists and stuff. Think about the ones who've been around for like 30, 40 years. That this person's been writing books that the left just loves. They've been typing articles. Maybe they've been in charge of a newspaper for 30, 40 fucking years. Or they just magically appeared out of nowhere, and suddenly liberal money just filled their pockets. And then they were this big deal. And now where are they? Madam Huffington, much, maybe? That kind of thing. Or maybe people on MSNBC or CNN, they were nobodies and suddenly they're rich, bitch. Even though they keep reporting stories that they get found out to be that they had just made shit up. Doesn't it? Oh, it's cool. It's cool, don't worry. You're going to find out. Cede and Company, also known as Cede and Co or Cede and Co, is a specialist United States financial institution that processes transfers of stock certificates on behalf of Depository Trust Company, the central securities depository used by the United States national market system, which includes New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, and other exchanges, together with associated clearinghouses such as NSCC, FICC, DTCC, and others. Algo coin people. Cede technically owns substantially all of the publicly issued stock in the United States. Thus, investors do not themselves hold direct property rights in stock, but rather have contractual rights that are part of a chain of contractual rights involving Cede. Founded in 1996, Cede was formed for the purpose of efficiently processing transfers of stock certificates on behalf of the Depository Trust Company. The name Cede was selected as a reference to Certificate Depository. The company is at 55 Water Street, Suite 4, I guess, New York, 10041. A common misconception is that Cede and Company is merely a fictitious legal name used to refer to Depository Trust Company. In fact, Cede is actually a New York City-based partnership of certain employees of DTC. Cede is a separate legal person from Depository Trust Company, which is owned by DTC participants who are banks and brokerage houses and not employees of DTC. One reason Cede is structured as a partnership is that each general partner can order transfers of stock registered in the name of the partnership without the need for presenting a separate corporate resolution to the stock issuer's transfer agent or stock registrar to validate the authority of the transfer. So, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, DTCC, is an American post-trade financial services company providing clearing and settlement services to the financial markets. It performs the exchange of securities on behalf of buyers and sellers and functions as a central securities depository by providing central custody of securities. DTCC was established in 1999 as a holding company to combine the Depository Trust Company, the DTC, and National Securities Clearing Corporation, NSCC. User-owned and directed, it automates, centralizes, standardizes, and streamlines processes in the capital markets. Through its subsidiaries, DTCC provides clearance, settlement, and information services for equities, corporate and municipal bonds, until unit investment trusts, government and mortgage-backed securities, money market instruments, and over-the-counter derivatives. It also manages transactions between mutual funds and insurance carriers and their respective investors. In 2011, DTCC settled the vast majority of security transactions in the United States and close to 1.7 quadrillion in value worldwide, making it by far the highest financial value processor in the world. The DTCC operates facilities in New York metropolitan area and at multiple locations in and outside the United States. Established in 1973, the Depository Trust Company was created to alleviate the rising volumes of paperwork and the lack of security that developed after rapid growth in the volume of transactions in the U.S. securities industry in the late 1960s. So from here it goes into the 1960s Wall Street paperwork crisis, and this is actually a very interesting read if you want to read about the computerization. But the thing that I thought was interesting was All right. By January 1969, it was transferring 10,000 shares per day. This is the Central Certificate Service. Yes. Which the New York Stock Exchange established in 68. And plans were for it to be handling broker-to-broker transactions in 1,300 issues by March 1969. In 1970, the CCS, the Central Certificate Service, was extended to the American Stock Exchange. This led to the development of the Banking and Securities Industry Committee, BASIC, which represented leading U.S. banks and securities exchanges, and was headed by a banker named Herman Beavis. Yes, like Beavis. And finally, the development of DTC in 1973, which was headed by Bill Denzer, the former New York State banking superintendent. All the top New York banks were represented on the board, usually by their chairman. BASIC and the SEC saw this indirect holding system as a temporary measure on the way to a certificateless society. Today, all the physical shares of paper stock certificates are held by a separate entity, Cede and Co. The second response involves multilateral netting and led to the formation of the National Securities Clearing Corporation, NSCC, in 1976. All right. So, the important part about all that was really that, so you understand that there's this sort of huge machine is relatively recent in creation, that all the people who are involved in this are pretty much still around. Like the first generation that comes in green into these bureaus, they're still around. And so it really is that's the whole deal with the bankers and why the response from the Obama administration was the way it was. But then you get into this. This is where the whole creepy part is. And this is where, so people who you didn't like Trump, you're the random Democrat or liberal. Did you ever look into the history of Rod Rosenstein? Mueller? Comey? Like who these people were, like why they were so qualified, what it was that they had done? Well, one weird thing that popped up right after Trump became president. See, the FBI opens its vault every once in a while. There's cases that come out. So one was the Finders, the one that actually really did have like this huge amount of evidence, this tremendous amount of evidence of a giant ring of people who like operate weird sort of private schools, and they'll just transfer kids around all over the place. And it turns out the parents were involved in like really smart people, kind of cultish groups, these kind of back to the landers and stuff. And it was very interesting to see what lawmen in the long run thought, being that the European police, I can't believe the name's right on the edge of my tongue. They shuffled them off. FBI shows up. They're like, well, don't look at this. All the police who had stumbled on all this weird stuff, and then were looking into it, and then the FBI looked into it, and by the end of this, they have like the intelligence agencies telling them, could you please stop looking into this? So that's one of those kind of things that the FBI vault like would pop up, and people would be like, what the fuck? And it would just, and unless somebody brought it up, like Jim Medicare brought up the Finders and walked through all that stuff on one of his streams. Just like how, Jim and the, going through everything that it did, that we already knew. We all knew about the Wuhan thing. If you watch Jim Medicare's streams by March, like literally as the shutdowns are happening, we already knew what all the stuff about the Wuhan lab, about all these doctors, about everything, every name that's come up, we already knew. We knew literally within the first 3 weeks because of the streams that were going on the right. So one of the things that popped up was that it turns out Rosenstein, I think it was Mueller, but I think Yeah, it was Rosenstein, Mueller, and there was somebody else that it's just not coming to me. They had all been involved in prosecuting Gotti. And even though the FBI released all this information, there was still one name redacted of a witness who testified against Gotti. And what did Gotti go away for? Concrete business. Messing with the concrete business. So that means somebody who used concrete, lots of concrete, might have been a witness against Gotti, and that person maybe had a very personal relationship with some of these lawyers. And why were these lawyers working for the government? And for how long? And what did they, like, what did they do? Where were they from? Senior executive services. Why is it that often you Democrats are this close, and then suddenly all your victory is gone? Why do you seem to get money, and then suddenly, when you're just about to bring up the big issue, the money's gone? The Senior Executive Service is a position classification in the civil service of the United States federal government equivalent to general officer or flag officer rank in the U.S. Armed Forces. It was created in 1979 when the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978 went into effect under President Jimmy Carter. According to the Office of Personnel Management, the SES was designed to be a corps of executives selected for their leadership qualifications, serving in key positions just below the top presidential appointees, as a link between them and the rest of the federal civil service workforce. SES positions are considered to be above the GS-15 levels of the general schedule and below level 3 of the executive schedule. Career members of the SES ranks are eligible for the Presidential Rank Awards program. Up to 10% of SES positions can be filled as political appointments. Up to 10%. Why did Trump keep putting these people in who hated him? About half of the SES is designated career reserved, which can only be filled by career employees. Is this starting to make you are you feeling like somebody went into your pockets, or do you feel like somebody maybe took something from you, or that maybe somebody's trying to fool you, or you've been fooled? The other half is designated general, which can be filled by either career employees or political appointments as desired by the administration. Due to the 10% limitation, most general positions are still filled by career appointees. Senior level employees of several agencies are exempt from the SES, but their own senior executive positions, So they have their own senior executive ... So there's the SES for the Office of Personnel Management, but then there's apparently other versions of this. Start thinking about people you see who are supposedly experts on the news. Where do they come from? How do these people write so many books? Who the fuck is Tony Fauci? These include Federal Bureau of Investigation, Central Intelligence Agency. What the hell was that about Peter Strzok? Defense Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, Senior Executive Cryptographers, or Senior, I think it's Senior Cryptographers, something like that. Somebody dropped something on a podcast I once heard that they admitted. They were like, yeah, I was in, our organization was the cryptographer service. Because then you also have, what you'll find out is a union that protects your rights, again, so the government doesn't abuse you. so the government doesn't abuse you. As you're paid $132,552 minimum. Transportation Security Administration, Federal Aviation Administration, Government Accountability Office, members of the Foreign Service, and government corporations. Adverse actions. SES career appointees have civil service protections. They may be fired or suspended for more than 14 days. They may only be fired or suspended for more than 14 days for misconduct, neglect of duty, malfeasance, or failure to accept a directed reassignment or to accompany a position in a transfer of function. These adverse actions may be appealed to the Merit Systems Protection Board, link. An SES career appointee can also be reassigned within the SES or from the SES into a competitive service position. I didn't notice that before. Based on performance ratings. A single unsatisfactory performance rating makes them eligible for reassignment, though it is not mandatory. However, they must be removed from the SES if they receive 2 unsatisfactory ratings in a period of 5 consecutive years, or 2 less than fully successful ratings within 3 consecutive years. Reassignments may not be appealed to the Merit Systems Protection Board. SES career appointees in the United States Department of Veterans Affairs have different procedures as a result of the Department of Veterans Affairs Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act of 2017. The Secretary of Veterans Affairs has discretion to suspend, demote, remove, or take other actions against SES career appointees or other high-level executives if the Secretary determines that the individual's misconduct or performance warrants such an action with abbreviated notice and appeals rights. Because I didn't really notice that. Okay, by contrast, non-career and limited-term SES appointees are generally not subject to removal protections and may be removed from the SES at any time. So there's a group of career people who they're protected pretty much for life, and it's almost impossible to fire them. They just get transferred around. They just get moved around. Does this sound in any way familiar to any other giant worldwide imperial hierarchy? They do something absolutely terrible, they commit fraud, and they're just moved around. They're never taken out of the high order, the high priesthood. Oop. All right. So I just want... Interesting. It's just you see that link that you're like, oh, okay, because Senior Foreign Service comprises the top 4 ranks of the United States Foreign Service. Career Ambassador at the top. Former SES grade ES6. Military rank O10. Career Minister O9 is their military rank. Minister Counselor O8. Counselor 07. So a counselor makes 127, or basically 128,000. Minister counselor 128,000. Career minister 128,000. So basically around 180 to 190,000 at the most. Very interesting. Foreign Services Act of 1980, the Rogers Act. Okay, so that's another one actually I highly recommend, the Senior Foreign Services. I had not quite realized actually how much really awesome stuff was just going to pop up like that. And so to quickly put a cherry on top of all of this, flashback, DC mayor honored at DNC for riot response. New report reveals she, not Trump, tear-gassed protesters. Good work, Democrats. For more than a year, DC Mayor Muriel Bowser allowed President Donald Trump to take the blame for what her police forces had done. The first speaker, former actress Eva Longoria, introduced the Democratic National Convention in August 2020 as Muriel Bowser, the Democratic Mayor of Washington. DC Longoria referenced the clearing of a street in front of the White House earlier that summer, an operation the media had repeatedly falsely characterized the violent removal of peaceful protesters with tear gas for the sole purpose of a photo opportunity for President Donald Trump. But so Amazingly, new report confirms it was Bowser, not Trump, who tear gassed the protesters a few blocks away from the White House on the evening in question. The protests had repeatedly devolved into violence and arson, and that the clearing was done for major security concerns and not a photo opportunity. For more than a year, Bowser allowed Trump to take the blame for what her police forces had done. That's excellent. Who could have thought, oh, the No Accountability Club, huh? And, well, I'll take a look at this one, actually. I did, that's kind of too dry. I didn't even take a look. So, yeah, just wanted to put that out there for you guys. Take care. See you tomorrow.